Antarctica. Today we will be uncovering and tackling the mysteries behind Antarctica as well as the sudden fascination that Mr. Obama has with Antarctica, as well as some of the operations that have been done within Antarctica and what they're really hiding, because there's a huge conspiracy and a cover up, and Antarctica plays a big role in this big conspiracy and in this big deception that is being hidden and covered up from you until today. But what if I told you that Hitler had something to do with Antarctica too? What if I told you that Hitler did not die in 1945 after World War II? What if I told you that Mr. Obama and all the other so-called politicians are so obsessed with Antarctica? What if I told you that they're hiding much more than meets the eye with Antarctica? And what if I told you that Antarctica does not look like the picture that you're seeing right in front of you today? That and more to come as we tackle this and more and the real agenda behind Antarctica and why this is so important. But before we go into the operations that have taken place in and around Antarctica in history, I would like to talk with you about Admiral Richard E. Byrd, who was in fact a known Freemason, and why he's so important to this big equation known as Antarctica. And I'm here at the Knights Templar website that talks about him in detail, and it says Byrd, who became a Mason at the age of 32, has been called the last explorer, but he was really a pioneer in a new breed using airplanes to cover vast areas of the earth which overland expeditions could never hope to reach. The common denominator of his polar expeditions and his career in the United States Navy was aeronautics, which led Admiral Nimitz to say at the end of World War II that if Admiral Byrd had never gone near the Antarctic, he would still be one of the greatest figures in American naval history for his contributions to the naval aeronautics program. And all that he did, he was identified as an officer of the United States Navy. He was indeed a graduate of the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, but after 4 years of active service, he was retired for disability sustained in accidents as an undergraduate and during his first tours of active duty. All of his later achievements came as a retired officer assigned to active duty, and each of his promotions to the flag rank of Rear Admiral came through a special act of Congress passed to recognize his achievement. During World War I, Byrd received temporary promotions to the rank of lieutenant commander, while on active duty assignments. By 1921, the Navy had returned those in temporary ranks to their permanent ranks, and in the case of a retired officer, a permanent promotion in rank could come only by special act of Congress. So to make the long story short, why is Mr. Byrd so important in this big equation? Because he is the one that led expeditions to Antarctica, and he's even written about these expeditions in many of his diaries as well. And what you're about to see is that many of the operations that came through in exploring Antarctica, as well as other explorations that have come from Antarctica, was led by this man right here. And this goes over some of his history and what he discovered. But it goes on to say in 1939, the third Byrd Antarctic expedition was undertaken under official United States Navy sponsorship, with Admiral Byrd as an ex-officio member of the board through his appointment as chairman of the United States Antarctic Service. The purpose of this expedition was to map 1,000 miles of Antarctic coastline between Marie Byrd Land and Alexander Land. Although this was called the Byrd expedition in the press, Admiral Byrd did not spend the winter in the Antarctic. After taking part in establishing the bases, he returned to the United States. So as you can see, during the time of around World War II, there were a ton of bases that were established in Antarctica by several other countries, and we're going to look at more of that when it comes to the Antarctic Treaty System and what all of this is really hiding. So this gives the brief history of Mr. Byrd and his expeditions that he took, and we're going to be talking about some of them in detail. But it says in 1946, the Navy launched a full-scale Antarctic expedition called Operation Highjump, which we will be talking about in a second, with Admiral Byrd as officer in charge but not commander of the 13 ships and 4,000 men. Following his return from Antarctica in April 1947, he was received, or relieved, I should say, of active duty. 2 years later, he was called back to active duty for Operation Highjump 2, which later was canceled by President and Sir Knight Truman. In 1955, President Eisenhower announced the United States would launch a new Antarctic expedition, and Admiral Byrd was named officer in charge, United States Antarctic Programs, but actual command of the task force for Operation Deep Freeze, and we're going to go over Operation Deep Freeze in just a second, was given to Rear Admiral George J. Dufek, who had been navigator of the USS Bear on the 1939 expedition. And then it talks about his later life as well. And what you're about to see is that some of these operations, there's a lot they're not telling you, and there's a bigger conspiracy that's being hidden, and we're uncovering that conspiracy, and we're tackling just what has been hidden, because the truth is what will make you free. Now that we have some history and background on Mr. Richard E. Byrd, let's talk about Operation Highjump and the UFO connection, as well as some other operations that have been done and conducted by the government, as well as Hitler and what really happened to Hitler after World War II. So here we are, and it says in 1947, Admiral Richard E. Byrd led 4,000 military troops from the United States, Britain, and Australia in an invasion of Antarctica called Operation Highjump, and at least one follow-up expedition. This is fact, it is undeniable, but the part of the story that is seldom told, at least in official circles, is that Byrd and his forces encountered heavy resistance to their Antarctic venture from flying saucers and had to call off the invasion. Why is this so important? You're about to see how this relates to NASA in just a second. It goes on to say the aspect of the story was pushed forward again a few years ago when a retired Rear Admiral allegedly living in Texas, who had been involved in the invasion, and said he was shocked when he read material from a documentary entitled Raya from the Sky. He allegedly claimed that he knew that there had been a lot of aircraft and rocket shoot-downs, but did not realize the situation was as serious as the documentary presented it to be. Operation Highjump was basically an invasion of the Antarctic, consisted of 3 naval groups which departed Norfolk, Virginia on the 2nd of December 1946. Now, mind you, this happened around the same time as the Roswell incident, so let's keep that in mind as well. But it goes on to say they were led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd's command ship, the icebreaker Northwind, and consisted of the catapult ship Pine Island, the destroyer Brownson, the aircraft carrier Philippine Sea, the U.S. submarine Senate, 2 support vessels Yankee and Merrick, and 2 tankers Canisted and Capricorn, the destroyer Henderson, and a float plane ship Currituck, a British-Norwegian force and a Russian force, and some Australian and Canadian forces were also involved. And it says, interestingly, the Pine Island, one of the seaplane tenders involved in the expedition, has a rather colorful history. The USS Pine Island, a Currituck-class seaplane tender, was laid down on the 16th of November 1942 at Todd Shipyard Corporation in San Pedro, California. It was launched on the 26th of February 1944 and has been given the commission name USS Pine Island on 26th of April 1945. The ship served throughout the final months of the Second World War and the immediate post-war period, but was decommissioned on the 1st of May 1950 when the Korean War broke out, and the ship was recommissioned on the 7th of October in 1950 at Alameda, California. She was finally decommissioned for good on the 16th of June 1967 and laid up in the reserve fleet. But here's where the story gets interesting. The USS Pine Island was struck from the Naval Register on an unknown date. Her title was transferred to the Maritime Administration for layup in the National Defense Reserve Fleet on an unknown date, and the ship's final disposition is unknown. Now, how does one go about losing a major surface ship over 640 feet long, almost 70 feet wide, with a displacement of over 15,000 tons? And you can read more about that on the rejoinder below, and I'm going to leave the link so you can see it as well. Then the report goes on to talk about the mystery of this ship as well as the Pine Island and how they were all involved in Antarctic research, and all of a sudden grew a fascination, or should I say a deep fascination, in Antarctica. Then it goes on to talk about the Roswell incident as well that had been in the news in the past summer just before Operation Highjump had begun and had taken place. Now, what was the bigger cover up? Why were they not talking about it? And then they started to see it is interesting to note that at the end of the war, the Allies determined that there were 250,000 Germans unaccounted for, even taking into account casualties and deaths. This would be quite a population base for a fledgling colony and provide the essential degree of skill, expertise, and the pure manpower for an industrial base of any sort, let alone the production of, even by today's standards, extremely high technology. So what happened after World War II? All of these men, or all of these Nazis, so to speak, they fled from Germany and other places and went to Antarctica, thousands and thousands of thousands of them. And when they got to Antarctica, what did they see and what did they encounter, even under the auspices of Richard E. Byrd? That is the question that we will be tackling today. So then the report goes on to talk about months after the Roswell incident and what happened between the Admiral Byrd, Admiral Cruzen, and Admiral Nimitz and what they found. And it also talks about the base that's called Neuschwabenland, which is an area of Antarctica which Germany explored and claimed before the outbreak of the Second World War. In fact, Germany had done a very detailed study of the Antarctic and were alleged to have built a small underground base there before the war. And that's something we will be talking about in detail today, underground bases and why they were built. Then it goes on to talk about some of the boats that were built there too, and of course, and what also happened, and even how some of them looked with the submarines as well, and why they were built. And it says many were thought to be operating out of Argentina, possibly under the Argentine flag, but crewed by German crew. So not only did all of these Nazis, not only did they go to Antarctica to work on secret projects under Operation Highjump, but they also went to Argentina and even some parts of Brazil. And who else went there? You're about to see in just a second. In fact, Adolf Hitler even knew about the expeditions that were taking place and had even authorized several of the expeditions to the so-called poles shortly before World War II had even begun. Now, their stated claimed objective was to either to rebuild and enlarge Germany's whaling fleet or test out weaponry in severely hostile conditions. Yet, if true, all of this could have been achieved at the North Pole rather than at both so-called poles and could have been much closer to home. So the question is, why did they need to go to South America and even Antarctica to do this according to this? Not only that, but there is a picture of Mr. Adolf Hitler when he was shaking hands with the so-called alien. I wonder why, and I wonder what they were getting ready for. But it goes on to talk about this operation and how they had been talking about what the unidentified flying object in the Bavarian Alps back in 1938, and they were seeing so-called UFOs. Not only that, but this is the region where they had spotted some of these UFOs, and also the ideal for secret supply bases that they were beginning in this region of Antarctica. You're going to see exactly what they were getting ready for, and you can read more of the history right here below. I'll leave the link for it below, but you're going to see that what they're talking about, alleged bases in Antarctica. What were these bases for, and who else was with them at these bases? That is the question we will be tackling, that and more to come. Now, I'm here at the CIA website that talks a little bit more about Operation Paperclip, and now this operation was a secret operation program to bring Nazi scientists to America. Now, this is a book that talks about it, and it says, as World War II ended, the race was on with the Soviet Union to seize as many German scientists as possible in anticipation of the Cold War. The full story has remained elusive until now. Now, this talks about a book by Annie Jacobson, but you could look up more research on Operation Paperclip and how this has to do with the Nazi program and the scientists that they brought to America America to do what? To start NASA, the fraudulent space program. But it goes on to talk about some of the cases that they had to talk about and historical revelations. But it also talks about Warner von Braun and Dr. Warner von Braun. And it even says that other prominent Nazis hired under this operation included Dr. Hubertus Strughold, General Reinhard Gehlen, and German biologist Dr. Kurt Blomy, and some other ones as well. And as you start to see that there were a lot of secret programs and convert programs to bring these so-called Soviet spies, and how they all had to do it. And also talks about the Operation Bluebird and Operation MK Ultra mind control that had to do with this as well, to program people's minds into thinking a certain way. You may be wondering, how does all of this relate? How does it all relate to one another? And what does this have to do with Antarctica? You're going to see in just a minute, but I'll give you a hint. NASA should be one of the things that should be on your mind, because why did they gather all these scientists together? Was to start the fraudulent space program called NASA and other fake space programs to get your mind to think a certain way, as well as to conspire to hide the evidence of Antarctica and the bigger evidences of Antarctica, which we're about to see in a minute to come. Now, we're here at the FBI website, and we're here at the FBI records, which is normally or commonly called the vault. And what you're about to see is that Adolf Hitler did not die in 1945 after World War II. He did not commit suicide, and you're about to see that. Not only that, but I thought it was interesting that they mentioned Werner von Braun in all these operations, because even Dr. Carol Rossen talked about what the last card that would be what the false alien invasion. Are you starting to put the pieces together? I hope so. Now, in these released documents, what you'll start to find is that hidden information has been hidden from the public regarding Hitler and what really happened, because it even says in one of the reports that even said the Nazi envoy says Hitler's still alive. And if you read through the pages in the text of this from the FBI website, and you'll even read letters and other different things from J. Edgar Hoover himself that all have to talk about Hitler and that all have to do with Hitler, because what really happened, he went with the Operation Highjump and Paperclip to go over to Antarctica and Brazil and Argentina to help start and fund the fraudulent space program called NASA, as well as the UFO connection with so-called aliens and how they had to cover up Antarctica. But just what are they covering up is the question. Like I said, when you start to uncover the mystery behind all this, then you start to see just how much has been hidden from us, just how much our history has been hidden from us, and just how much they are not telling us, even though they're literally putting it in front of our faces, because anyone can access these FBI records. But of course, they have to make it covert as possible, and they're still not telling you what really happened and what really went on throughout all of history and through the Nazi documents, as well as the so-called space race, and how this all has to do with the Antarctic mystery, which we are uncovering today. Now, it's interesting because these documents also talk about certificates of marriage from Adolf Hitler that happened a couple of months after his supposed death in 1945, because as you can see, this is dated from 1946, as well as other documentations of Hitler visiting hospitals and other places. Now, what you start to see is that it's all interesting and suspicious indeed. How does this relate to Antarctica and what really happened to Mr. Hitler? So now that we have just gone over what really happened to Hitler, and I've just proven to you with FBI documents that Hitler did not die when they said he did, that he went to Antarctica with the Nazis in Operation Highjump and Operation Paperclip to Antarctica to start the fraudulent program called NASA and to work with the so-called UFOs and so-called aliens. Now I'm here at the University of Cambridge at the Scott Polar Research Institute, Department of Geography, and it talks about what the United States Navy Antarctic expeditions, and we're going to be talking now about Operation Deep Freeze from 1955 to 1998. Now it says, Operation Deep Freeze was a series of expeditions between 1955 and 1998, signaling a renewal in American interest in the Antarctic. Now mind you, this is the same time 1955 is around the end of Mr. Richard E. Byrd's life and around the end of his period. It goes on to say that these expeditions were military operations operations run and supported by various American military agencies, like the United States Navy being one of them. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd was officer in charge, and so was the most senior U.S. representative monitoring political, scientific, legislative, and operational activities making up the U.S. Antarctic program. The photographs in the freeze frame project concern Operation Deep Freeze on their first exercise between November of 1955 and March of 1956, and are negatives of photographs taken by Lieutenant Commander M.J. Foster, RN, when British observer in Operation Deep Freeze 1955 to 1956. The primary mission of the 1955 to 1956 operation was to do what? To establish 2 stations along the Ross Sea and the transportation of personnel, equipment, and supplies to build 2 stations in the interior the following spring. In addition, they would undertake reconnaissance by aircraft and tractor to carry out scientific projects. 1,800 men were taken to the Antarctic to carry out this work. To get the men and all the necessary supplies southwards, they used a number of ships: USS Edisto, USS Glacier, and USCGC Eastwind. And they also used some cargo ships as well. The intention was to build 2 base camps, one in the region of the Bay of Whales and the other at McMurdo Sound, and that is what they did. And they were saying a second base was established, and it says, in addition, the flights from McMurdo Sound surveyed 800,000 square miles of Antarctica, which had never been seen before. This is what they're telling us, but we know better than that. Flights from here also discovered the highest point of Ice Dome at 14,000 feet on the 18th of January due to poor ice conditions on the runaway. The flights had to stop and the planes had to return to New Zealand as well. And here you can see some of the pictures that were taken as well. You can see some of the pictures of the operations, and you can also view the complete gallery if you would like to. But I just wanted to share this operation with you because these are some of the operations that have taken place and have to do with Antarctica. But what are they really hiding? What is the bigger conspiracy? Like I said, it has something to do with NASA and the fraudulent space program that was started, but it goes much deeper than that. And you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I also wanted to go over Project Monarch, or what's commonly known as Nazi mind control, as well as Project MK Ultra. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but long story short, within all these operations of Paperclip, Highjump, and Deep Freeze, what they were also doing and what the Nazis were also conducting was mind control tactics, where they would take certain slaves and put them under MK Ultra and basically what? Mind control, in order to control their mind, to make them think a certain way, to get the psychological effects of how they could think a certain way and how they could mentally reprogram people into thinking a certain way that they had them to rethink. Now, you may be wondering, what does this have to do with NASA and reprogramming of the mind with different aliens and all the propaganda that has to go along with it? Propaganda that they've been pushing even since the 1950s with alien commercials and alien invasion commercials, even up until today with Hollywood, or should I say Hollywood movies. Could that all have something to do with mind control? Celebrities can tell you all about that, especially celebrity women. But what does this have to do with Antarctica? You're about to find out in just a second. Now, I would also like to talk about Operation Fishbowl and Operation Dominic as well, which were conducted nuclear tests that were done around Antarctica in the late 1950s and early 1960s to see if they could pass through the firmament. Don't know what I'm talking about? You're about to find out in just a second. But here I am at Wikipedia, and I'm talking about the Antarctic Treaty System. And it says, the Antarctic Treaty and related agreements, collectively known as the Antarctic Treaty System, or the ATS, regulate international relations with respect to Antarctica, Earth's only continent without a native human population. That's what they want us to believe. But let's keep going. For the purposes of the treaty system, Antarctica is defined as all of the land and ice shelves south of 60 degrees latitude. The treaty, entering into force in 1961 and having 53 parties as of 2016, sets aside Antarctica as a scientific preserve, establishes freedom of scientific investigation, and bans military activity on that continent. The treaty was the first arms control agreement established during the Cold War. The Antarctic Treaty Secretariat headquarters had been located in Buenos Aires, Argentina, Argentina since September 2004. The main treaty was opened for signature on December 1st, 1959, and officially entered into force on June 23rd, 1961. The original signatories were the 12 countries active in Antarctica during the International Geophysical Year of 1957 through 1958, and the 12 countries that had significant interest in Antarctica at that time were Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, the Soviet Union, which is commonly known as Russia today, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These countries had established over 50 Antarctic stations for the IGY. The treaty was a diplomatic expression of the operational and scientific cooperation that had been achieved on the ice. You can learn more about it. I'll leave the link below. Why is this so important, and what are they really hiding? Because what does this treaty really do? It also bans anybody from going too far. Why do you think they have all these bases set up to begin with? Why do you think all these countries, took a chunk of Antarctica and took a piece of it? What are they hiding from you? What don't they want you to know about Antarctica? What is the bigger mystery behind all this, and what is the deeper meaning? And why have all these nations here? What could they be hiding? Now, these are all of the countries that have signed the Antarctic Treaty. Here's a better list of it. Now, like I said, it was done in Washington on December 1st, 1959, and went into force on June 23rd, 1961. And as you can see, here are the list of countries that have all taken part and have some part or something to do with Antarctica. Now, the question you should be asking yourself, why all the sudden interest in Antarctica? Why do all these countries want a part of Antarctica? And better yet, why did this happen around the same time that NASA just so happened to be started and founded, as well as the so-called space race and the propaganda that goes with that? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. What are they really hiding from us? And like I said, if you even try to make an expedition to Antarctica, it's just like Area 51, which we're going to be talking about later on. They keep it hidden and blocked off. Why are they keeping this section of the world blocked off and hidden? What exactly are they hiding? What do they know that we don't? Now, briefly, I would like to go over with you this article from the Telegraph, and it talks about Area 51. Now, you're going to understand what this has to do and how this relates to Antarctica as well, because like I just said, Antarctica is just like Area 51. What are they hiding? But this says from the Telegraph, deep in the Nevada desert, the U.S. has a highly secretive base known as Area 51. But how much do we know about it? Area 51 is located 83 miles north of Las Vegas in Nevada, and is classified as a U.S. military installation. Area 51 and extraterrestrial life both exist, says head of NASA, and they're going to keep feeding us the extraterrestrial life because that's what they want us to believe. But it says, for years it was one of the U.S. government's worst kept secrets until it was officially acknowledged by the CIA in 2013 and its location revealed. Documents that were declassified in 2013 described that it was used during the Second World War as an aerial gunnery for the Army Air Corps pilots. Now, it's interesting, we just went over that had to do with the Second World War, and right after the Second World War that all these operations with Highjump, Paperclip, and Deep Freeze all having to do with interests of Antarctica. I wonder why that is. The site was later approved for development and testing of experimental aircraft and weapon systems by President Dwight Eisenhower. The intense secrecy concerning what went on at Area 51 has made it the frequent subject of conspiracy theories, most famously that it is a center for research of aliens and UFOs. And by the way, the CIA has just even released a couple of months ago documents and declassified documents of what? UFOs with the X-Files that are talking about it, because what are they getting you ready for? The disclosure. Because what else aren't they telling you about this, and what else are they keeping hidden? Is that what? That your government has been working with these so-called aliens for over 70 years now, after World War II, even before World War II. And what they're also not telling you is that no, they are not so-called aliens, and no, they do not come from other planets. No, that is all a lie. They are the demons and the fallen angels. They do not want you to know that. That information is also classified too, but they're not going to tell you that because they're getting ready for the disclosure that is about to take place when your lovely president in the Vatican goes onto the screen and says, oh my goodness, we made contact with aliens. Oh my gosh, there are aliens up there. We all need to merge as a new world order in order to fight off this threat with nuclear space-based weapons, because that is what they're getting ready for. You can even look that up with Dr. Carol Rossen, who also has learned that information from Dr. Warner von Braun. The last card, I hope it's making sense. But what does Antarctica have to do with this? Because what crashed alien spacecraft along with so-called extraterrestrial bodies supposedly recovered from Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 are widely rumored to be stored there. No, they're not alien spacecraft. They're the fallen angels. They are the demons. They are the demigods. That's who they are. And they were stationed in Antarctica as well. And they brought these scientists to Antarctica. Why? Because they wanted to start this fraudulent space program called NASA and use mind control to make you think that, oh, it's that space is real and that, oh, those planets are real. When they're getting ready for the new world order, they've been planning this for how many years? And I hope you're seeing that, because that's exactly what those UFOs and everything else is. This is real, authentic truth being revealed to you, because your government's not going to tell you this stuff because they don't want you to know the real truth for what it is. But hopefully you're seeing it with both your eyes open. And you're seeing how it relates to Antarctica, because there are so many bases in Antarctica that might as well be in Area 51. There are so many there that are located there and that were placed there after World War II. And not only that, but what also happened too was that the so-called aliens made a deal with the government to do what? And the Zionists as well, to do what? To give them technology in exchange for world control. And that is exactly what they do. That is why you see all of these military tanks and all of these weaponries and weapons and stuff like that, and all this technology. Where do you think it really comes from? I will let you answer that and figure it out on your own. Remember, there's a lot they're not telling you, and the question we need to be tackling is, what exactly are they hiding? Now, you're looking at a map of the so-called Antarctica that you see plastered over globes everywhere. I wonder why that is, and so-called pictures that were so-called discovered from so-called space missions, when we know better than that. But here, it even shows you what? It shows you a path over Antarctica, and the question that you should always be wondering is that there are no commercial flights over Antarctica. Now, why would that be the case if, according to NASA and according to them, that Antarctica looks like this? This is according to our government, that this is what Antarctica looks like. Okay, if that's the case, then we should be able to fly over Antarctica to get from Australia all the way to South America. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Or now we should also be able to fly from Cape Town, South Africa over Antarctica and able to get to New Zealand, or even to get to Sydney, Australia. However, that never happens. On commercial airlines, you never see that happening. It takes 17 to 18 hours just to get from Cape Town, South Africa all the way to Australia and New Zealand, and it even takes longer to get from Australia all the way to South America. It could take a day or two, not to mention the stops that flights have to make, that commercial airlines have to make. Now, if Antarctica looks like this, like they try to tell us and like they spoon feed us, then why is it that no commercial airlines are able to travel through Antarctica? Why is it that they have to take the ocean and go around Antarctica, and that not even one single flight goes past Antarctica and past the alleged South Pole? Why is that? You will find no flight that does this. You can even look up flights and you will see that in the Southern Hemisphere flights, none of them will travel over Antarctica. What are they really hiding, and what aren't they telling us? Because what they're not telling you is that Antarctica does not look like that. And these are actual maps of the world that have been hidden from you in history. Now, these are actual maps of the world that were taken and that were done. Ancient maps that have been hidden and suppressed from you. I wonder just what they are hiding. Now, as you can see in this map, and this is how Antarctica really looks, what Antarctica really looks like is a ginormous ice ring that goes all around the world. So you can't even get past Antarctica. Not only that, but when you go to Australia right here and you get to Sydney right about here, in order to get to Africa, you have to go all the way this way just to get to South Africa. And if you would like to get to South America from Australia, you would have to go right here and you would have to go all the way across the Pacific Ocean just to get to South America. Or you would have to pass through America in order to get to South America, which is what a lot of commercial airlines do. No commercial airline goes past Antarctica or even crosses Antarctica. Why is that the case if according to their map, it should be real easy just to go to Antarctica and pass it and pass through the alleged South Pole just to get to the other side of either Africa or South America? But why doesn't that ever happen? I wonder why that is. Now here is another map of the square and stationary Earth that was done by Professor Orlando Ferguson from Hot Springs, South Dakota. Now as you can see, this is a more accurate depiction of the map, and as you can see, here's Australia again going all the way past the Pacific Ocean to South America. And as you can see, Antarctica is all this giant ice wall that is around and encompassing the entire Earth, which makes sense because when navigators and circumnavigators, when they want to circumnavigate the Earth, well, circumnavigate, what does that mean? It means circum, which means to circle around like this. And not only that, but many can even tell you that Antarctica is very deep and very vast and very far. It does not look like the map that they show you on a globe. It's a giant ice ring, and they're using these Nazi bases as well as all these countries going to Antarctica to hide the true way Antarctica looks. They don't want you to know how Antarctica really, really looks. I wonder why that is. Now here's another hidden map that's not normally shared with the entire world, and I wonder why that is, but it's called Hammond's Air Age Map of the World, a Polar Projection. Now as you can see in this map here, and I zoomed it in so you can see, here's the so-called North Pole right here with the Arctic Ocean right there, and here we see America, South America, we see Africa over here, but as you can see in the outer edges, here is Antarctica right here, and as you can see, it's this giant ice ring that goes all the way around, as you can see. And as you can see right here, here's Australia that's right here. And you can see all of these lines that are made to see how far and how to track distance in the correct way. Now, as you can see, Antarctica goes all the way around the world. So if you want to get from Australia all the way to Africa, so to speak, you have to go all the way this way in order to get to Africa, which is what Southern Hemisphere flights have to do. So that's not a conspiracy. The conspiracy is, why don't they go past Antarctica? I wonder why that's the case. And like I said, if you want to go from Australia all the way to South America, you have to go this way in order to get there. And you never pass or cross Antarctica. You have to take oceans in order to do it, or you have to take landmass in order to do it as well. Is there a big conspiracy being hidden from you? Like I said, these are just some of the maps that I wanted to show you of that really depict Antarctica the correct way and how Antarctica really looks. Oh, but it's not just Antarctica either, and it's not just those maps that depict the map the correct way. It's also the United Nations. They've been showing us and telling us how the world looks all along. And it says, as you can see, that I'm at the UN flag and emblem at the actual United Nations website, and it says, the current United Nations emblem was approved on the 7th of December 1946. Oh wow, just before Operation Highjump, Paperclip, and Deep Freeze. Very interesting. The design is a map of the world representing an azimuthal, equidistant projection centered on the North Pole, inscribed in a wreath consisting of cross-conventionalized branches of the olive tree and gold on a field of smoke blue with all water areas in white. The projection of the map extends to 60 degrees south latitude and includes 5 concentric circles. Olive branches symbolize peace. The world map depicts the area of concern to the UN in achieving its main purpose, peace and security, because that's what they want us to believe. But when you look at the emblem, the question you should be asking, where is Antarctica? I don't see Antarctica on this map at all. Not only that, but this map is actually a very accurate depiction of how the Earth actually looks. As you can see, here's Australia, and you go all the way from Australia all the way to South America. It's much farther than it is on a map from the globe, so to speak. And here's the actual flag, and it says the official emblem of the United Nations in white, centered on a light blue ground, and it gives the proportions and the use as well. And as you can see, Where is Antarctica on this map is the question you should be wondering. Where is Antarctica? I don't see it anywhere. I wonder why that is. What are they hiding then? What are they hiding with Antarctica? This is the most accurate depiction of the world and how it looks. This is an accurate depiction, and as you can see, Antarctica is this giant ice ring that circles all around. What are they hiding? They are hiding the flat earth from you. They are hiding the firmament, because what they're not telling you is the reason you cannot go all the way to the edge, because many people ask this. When you get all the way to the edge of Antarctica, you reach the firmament. And what is the firmament? It's this giant glass dome that you can no longer pass. They even put a dome in the Simpsons movie, as well as the TV show Under the Dome. Hello, it's time to wake up to this truth and see what's been hidden from you all along, even though the UN is literally showing you what the world really looks like every single day in your face, literally. But what are they hiding from you? They are hiding the firmament. They are hiding your creator from you, because they want you to think that aliens are real. They want you to think space and those planets are real, when that is not the case. That is what they're hiding from you, and they're doing a great job of it to get you ready and conditioned for the new world order, for the one world government. When they say, oh my gosh, aliens are coming from another planet. No, they are not aliens, and they're not from some other planet. They've been here all along, hiding underground. Just because you cannot see it doesn't mean it's not there. But yes, on the edge of this is the firmament. And think about it as like one giant snow globe. Think about us being entrapped in one giant snow globe. And when it says the earth is round, yes, it's round as in a circle, not a sphere. Yes, the earth is flat. Please wake up to this truth immediately, because what you're going to see is that there's been so much hidden from you, and my goal today is to uncover the big Antarctic mystery, as well as why Obama's so fascinated with it, because they're getting ready for disclosure for the new world order and the one world government. But now that you're awakened to truth, and now that you know how Antarctica really looks like, you are ready for the big deceptions to come. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son YAHUSHA, and if you keep believing NASA, I highly recommend you stop believing a word they tell you, because it is all a mental psyop. They are lying to your face. Why do you think there was only one so-called mission to the moon, and that was it? I wonder why that's the case. I wonder why that is. I wonder what they're hiding from you. But like I said, hopefully this has revealed truth to you and how Antarctica really looks in the world that you really live on, because there's bigger deceptions to come. Do not be fooled. This is Truth Unveiled here saying, Shalom.